Hello, it is Myra. Just want to get started with our first anatomy lesson. Disclaimer, this is only going to be for like the lay person that doesn't know anything about anatomy. I'm going to go over, lesson number one is going to be over some of the lobes of the brain. I am not going to go into a whole lot of detail. I'm going to be going into some of the lobes of the brain and what they do, just so we can have a better understanding of that. But it won't be anything that's going to go way over your head. So if you already know anatomy, you're in the medical profession, it's going to be very, very basic. It's not going to be anything a professor in a college or x-ray school or anything like that will teach you. This is just for the layperson. I have been asked to do this for a few people, lay people, and so this is actually why I'm doing it. So anyway, let's get started. I'm going to be going over the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, the limbic, and memory. So that's going to be just those 5 today. Next week or next time I put a video together, then it'll be over something else. I'm going to try to go from the brain down. Some will be soft tissue, some will be bone, some more systems at some point, but I've chosen to start at the head. I may do cranium next week, next lesson, but for now, I thought I would just focus on the lobes of the brain. So the ones I'm going to be working on, like I said, or teaching you about tonight is frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, limbic, and also the memory. Okay? So, number one, the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe helps coordinate voluntary movements. It also helps with impulse control and decision making. It also assesses the similarities and differences between two objects. So, a cup and a plate, a spoon and a fork, that sort of thing. It helps you know the differences between the two that is in your frontal lobe, okay? Also, the frontal lobe helps with forming and retaining long-term memory. So your long-term memory is controlled, it is formed, it helps you retain long-term memory there. Also, it helps in understanding language. So when you're learning a language, you're learning English, Spanish, whatever, that is where all that comes from. It helps to retain that. Linguistic, speaking, memories, part of that is in your frontal lobe. It also is a place where you regulate your emotions and your expressions in the frontal lobe. So your frontal lobe helps regulate emotions and expression, okay? Another thing that the frontal lobe does, personality development. Very important. It helps you to, when you develop your personality, that's where it starts, in your frontal lobe here, front. Also, what it does, it helps regulate your attention span. Frontal lobe, it's where you get your attention regulation, okay? Things that will happen if you have injuries to your frontal lobe, I found this very interesting, is if you have injuries to your frontal lobe, it may cause poor decision making, skills for decision making. You're not making the right decisions. Something is going on with your frontal lobe. Another thing that could happen if you have injuries to your frontal lobe, you have difficulty with planning, executive functions, and attention. So your attention span may not be as sharp if you have some kind of injury to your frontal lobe. Another thing, if you have injuries, it could be sudden injuries to your frontal lobe. It may cause sudden, dramatic changes with your personality. So if someone just all of a sudden has flipped the script, as they say, it might be caused from some kind of frontal lobe injury. Another thing, if you have some injury to your frontal lobe, difficult to understand social cues. Now, we all know how to act in a social setting, but if you have someone that was doing really well and then all of a sudden they're just not acting right in the social setting, you may want to check out the frontal lobe. The next thing is they have difficulty with empathy and relating to other people's emotions. So that's also a sign of some kind of frontal lobe injury there. Last one is they have change in motor skills and they have difficulty with the ability to reason. So change in motor skills, walking, talking, that sort of thing. And they also have the inability to reason with you, to reason with them, someone, or something. The reasoning is not there. The next lobe I want to talk about and discuss is the parietal lobe. Parietal lobe is very important because it's where you have your sensory perception and integration. For instance, your sight, your taste, your hearing, your smell, and your touch. All of those are located in the parietal lobe of your brain. So sight, taste, hearing, smell, and touch. Parietal also affects functions of cognitive speech, also writing. So anything you need to learn or do as far as speech and writing is all coming from your parietal lobes of your brain. The next one I want to talk about is occipital. It's in the back. Occipital lobe is where you handles your spatial processing, where the brain decodes signals from your retina. It allows you to see sharp shapes, textures, and other details around objects, the objects that are around you. So all of that comes from your occipital lobe, okay? It decodes the signals from your retina, which is in your eyes, correct? It allows you to see shapes, textures, and other things around, and it details the objects, your objects that you're seeing. A square versus a circle. Okay, is it round, square? Is it near, far? It also, your occipital lobe, helps with your color processing. You can tell the difference between colors, what colors they are, what shades of those colors are, unless you already have certain colors that you can't see. If you already can't see them, it's not going to process those colors. It also helps with distance. It's where you get your distance and your depth perception. Your brain calculates the size of the object and the distance between you and what you see. That's also in your occipital, occipital lobe, lobe. It's also in your occipital lobe. It also helps with object and face recognition. Recognize things you have seen before. Makes sense, right? Including faces and people you've met personally or you've seen outside on the TV, co-workers. That's where your object and your face recognition is in your occipital lobe. Okay. Last thing we want to talk about on the occipital lobe is it's where you have information sharing. How your brain shares vital information with other areas of your brain to encode the information and form memories. Okay. Next lobe we're going to talk about, one of my favorites, is the temporal lobe. Okay. Temporal lobe manages or contributes to several of your most useful abilities. Very important. Object, face recognition, memory storage, and recall. You can recall something. Language, understanding language and the expression of the language. Also, emotional reactions and processing, how you react. That's controlled in your temporal lobe. Also within the temporal lobe is the hearing auditory complex. Very important. It processes audio information. And within that is the superior temporal gyrus, or gyrus, G-Y-R-U-S. It contains the auditory cortex. It hears from the ears and analyzes it. Okay, we're still in the temporal lobe. Now we've got into the hearing auditory complex within the temporal lobe. The sound, the audio is analyzed, it's filtered, and it filters relevant information and passes it on to be understood. Okay? The limbic and memory system, we'll talk about those. This will be the last two. The limbic directly involves the regulation of memories and emotions. One part of this system is called the hippocampus. Now, if you've ever had an MRI of your brain, you've gone to a neurologist. We do a lot of brain MRIs where I work. I have over the years. And one neurologist is really, really strict about if we do his patient, because some of them have memory loss, want to see this area called the hippocampus. Okay. The reason is it plays a role for sorting long-term memory. So we want to make sure there's nothing going on within the hippocampus. I'll spell it HIPPOCAMPUS, hippocampus, one word. It's where the long-term memory is. It affects the long-term memory. And he wants to see if anything is going on in there, because people that have long-term memory, there may be a problem with the hippocampus within the limbic and memory system. Okay? There is another one within there, and I will spell it. It's the amygdala, amygdala is the emotional center of the brain, helping to process emotions. It's where you process the emotions, and having a role in the fight or flight reaction. If you've never heard of the fight or flight reaction, it's when your body literally does it, fight or flight. It's do or die. It's let's get it done. What's happening, right? So the definition that I found was the fight or flight response is a instinctive physiological response to a threatening situation. When you either are you're gonna run away or you're gonna fight. Okay, fight or flight. So when you are you going to resist something, getting attacked or whatever, or when you resist something forced on you, or you're going to run away. That is, in this instance, it's the fight or flight. Okay? All right. If you have any questions, just leave it in the comments. I hope you've enjoyed this little short, informative lesson. Try to keep it as short as I can, but I want you to learn things. If you have any questions, just let me know. And I will see you in the next lesson. Have a good night.